All right, I'm going to talk about the year of polar prediction and a little bit more broad than just the modeling. I'm a member of the Polar Prediction Project Steering Committee. I took a presentation by Thomas Jung, the chair of the PPP Steering Committee, that was held in Iceland at the Icelandic Meteorological Office in Reykjavik. A number of us were there earlier this month. Well, I'm having a few technical issues here. Let's see. What's the issue here? Page down. There we go. All right. So just to remind you about the year of polar prediction, of course, we have a mission statement, and it's targeted at significant improvement in environmental prediction. So that's not only the atmosphere, but all other important physical components for the polar regions and beyond. And it's coordinating a period of intensive observing, modeling, prediction, verification, user engagement, and educational activities. So for those of you that don't know, the website is polarprediction.net. If you can't remember anything about it, you can just Google polar prediction and let's say Arctic in Google, and you will get to it. Okay, so I'm preaching to the choir here, but I'll go quickly across this. Why are we interested? So very quickly, and one of the primary motivations, of course, is this polar amplification of climate change going on. We all know about the possibility of extensive ship traffic in the summer in the Arctic, and we hope there'll never be any problems like oil spills or sinking of ships or anything like that, but that's always a possibility. And having better prediction of what's happening in the atmosphere, the ocean, the sea ice should go a long way to alleviating those kind of problems. Okay, so the timeline, we had a preparation phase that ran to the middle of 2017. Right now we're in something called the core phase, which ran from the middle of 2017 to the middle of 2019. It has such things as special observing periods, which you'll see in a moment, field campaigns, snapshots, dedicated model experiments, coupled data assimilation. I won't have time to talk very much about research into the use and value of the forecast, but that's an important aspect. The verification, particularly of the ISAO sites, and as part of education, a summer school. So we're getting towards the middle of 2018. Starting in the middle of 2019, we had something called the consolidation phase, which will have perhaps more modeling, data denial experiments, so with and without special observations, model developments, reanalyses, hopefully implementation at the operational global forecast centers, and the usual kind of things of publications and conferences. Okay. If you, probably many of you know about this Yop Endorsement Activity. It has been one of the most successful activities. I think we've got over 100 projects and institutions that have requested endorsement. This is a little cartoon of where we are. And you can see it's broken up into atmosphere, including land, and ocean, including sea ice. The Arctic has by far the greatest number of projects, not surprising. There's a mixture of observations in the blue, modeling in the red, some activities in social science. An important new dimension is this institutional endorsement, which, for example, one that I recognize here is ECC, which is Environment and Climate Change Canada, for example, who are very active in YOPP. Okay, so the YOPP endorsement is going to continue beyond the core phase, and so if you're still interested in having your relevant projects endorsed, I think it will probably continue to about the middle of 2021. Okay. All right, so the core phase in the Arctic, once again, I'm going to talk about mid-2017 to mid-2019. It was launched, the core phase was launched at WMO headquarters in the middle of last year. And it'll have things like core modeling. We'll talk about the special observing periods in a moment. The buoy coverage, there is field campaigns, extra modeling, satellite snapshots, and then there's this a little bit awkward project, which is very active, called Mosaic, which kind of falls out of the core period, but is really part of the core phase. So we'll see how we're going to deal with that in the so-called consolidation phase. Okay, and there is a plan now, a concrete plan, to have another special observing period in the Arctic during winter that'll overlap with Mosaic. Okay, all right. So right now, as I said, this is a little bit broader presentation. The first special observing period for the winter time is still underway. It started in February the 1st and runs to the end of March 2018. There's a lot of additional radiosondes from 17 Arctic stations. There is a major addition of the drifting buoys planned for the special observing period. That's in the summer. I'll show that in a moment. There is YOPP endorsed campaigns. I don't know a lot about these. The Iceland Greenland Seas project. There is a vessel. I don't know which one. Whoops. There we go. Oasis YOPP, I guess based out of Thule. 3 sons. I don't know whether that's 3 sons per day or 3 sons total. There is the ongoing ice caps project at Summit Greenland, and they're releasing radiosonde balloons 2 per day. And I'm not familiar with this. Oh, I know, the Maximize aircraft campaign being flown out of Alaska and Canada. This is a UK project, I believe. Targeted various things about snow emissivity, for example, to assimilate microwave radiances, I believe. Okay. All right. So this is what Tennille mentioned, that there are these things called the super sites, which are basically those observing locations that have enhanced observations. I think most of these or all of these are the ISAO sites. And the goal here is to provide, particularly with the global forecast centers, model output centered on these locations and it's going to be at high time frequency and high vertical resolution. So you can do one-to-one comparison between the model fields and the observations in things like where the clouds are, what the phase is, how deep they are, what the radiation fluxes look like at the surface, what the surface energy balance looks like. Okay, so that's an important activity, target particularly at the model physics. Okay, so let's go over the modeling and forecasting data sets. Well, first of all, ECMWF has a fairly extensive YOPP data set. There is what is called the EPS, the Ensemble Prediction System Controlled Forecasts. I think that's their operational forecasts. I guess the ensemble runs at 18 kilometers, and that's going to be archived for the entire YOPP core period. The coupled model results from autumn, I think that was autumn 2017 at 9 kilometers. Important to do diagnostic or budget studies. There'll be the process tendencies, which is a special output from the models. And the website is there, okay? And you can, I haven't Googled it, but I think it's publicly available. Another one is from Environment ECC, that's Environment and Climate Change Canada. They have a lot of coupled atmosphere, ocean, sea ice output. They have what is called the REOPS, which I think is for the Arctic, the Regional Ice Ocean Prediction System. I'm not sure where they get the atmospheric forcing from. Okay, so the ice and ocean at 3 to 8 kilometers. I guess the forecasts run out for 2 days. Then there's the GEOPS, the Global Ice Ocean Prediction System. So that's north and south, 25 kilometers, a quarter degree in the ice and the ocean, and it runs out to 10 days. Then they have their ensemble forecasts, which run out for 32 days with 20 members. They've got seasonal predictions, and it's available through the World Mapping Service. And I haven't tried to log on that to see, but if you wanted to do studies, for example, of how the forecasts are doing and why they're doing it, these are very, very good data sets and publicly available to do those diagnostic work. All right. So just to give you kind of an idea of the operational support by the meteorological services, they're providing support for YOPP endorsed campaigns. So for example, Environment and Climate Change Canada, ECMWF, FMI, Finnish Meteorological Institute, this National Marine Environmental Forecasting Center in China, particularly for the ocean operations, Icelandic Meteorological Office, where we were in the middle of March, Met Norway, the Russian Federation. So the Met Office in the UK, for example, is supporting that Maximize project. Jean will probably talk about what the National Weather Service is doing in Alaska, in USGS Sea Ice, and the Naval Research Laboratory. All right. So I seem to be talking a lot about data, so you'll forgive me about that. There is this thing called the YOPP Explorer, where you can find out about what data is going to be collected or is being collected. There. So it produces a plot like this, which shows you the kind of observations, whether they're in green for activity planned and scheduled, or whether they're airborne campaigns, purple if they're under consideration, or just gray, they're ongoing continuous activities. These big S's, you can see super sites. So here's Summit, Greenland, and north of Alaska, and Sadankala, I think, in Finland, I believe. So just to kind of give you an idea about that. And you remember about the super sites, that's where the model output, forecast model output, and the detailed observations are going to be easily compared with each other. Okay. There is something called the YOPP data portal, and this is where you can go to find out what's available, both in terms of, I think, observations and model data sets. Okay, the website is at the bottom. It's progressing reasonably well, but not fully operational yet. And this is a metadata site, not the data itself, but you can find out where it is and where to go to get it. Okay. There is a fairly extensive outreach program. If you're not familiar with that, there's a kind of testimonials as to why polar prediction matters. And there's some blogs available that you can read about why individuals and users think that polar prediction is important. Okay. All right, so let me wrap this up. I was also asked to talk about NSF opportunities for YOPP involvement. And this is only my limited understanding of what's available, and I'm sure the people on the telecon can expand this. There is the IceCaps ongoing project at Summit Greenland, which is a combination of observations and modeling. There is, of course, the Mosaic Drift campaign, which is going to start in the fall of 2019, and I should put the fall of 2020 there. And importantly for YOPP is that there will be a third YOPP Arctic Special Observing Period during winter. I put late winter, but I think it's February, March 2020. I know I'm involved in a couple of aircraft campaigns that are proposed. One is called CESAR, which targets cold air outbreaks over the North Atlantic. It's requesting the NCAR C-130. It's targeted for winter 2020. So once again, there's a lot of these things that fall within the Mosaic timeframe. Then there's this thin ice aircraft program, which is also proposed. It targets investigations of Arctic cyclones. It's requesting the G5 for summer 2020. The Office of Naval Research is the lead. Some of the many areas that could be supported, and to my knowledge, there's limited or no support at the moment through the regular grants program, is things like numerical weather prediction analysis and improvement. And you saw those extensive data sets from ECMWF and Environment and Climate Change Canada, and they're not the only ones. I'm not aware yet of anything that's funded in societal and in economic research and applications. The CERA is kind of a big emphasis in YOPP, in particular the use of the forecasts. How are they being used and delivered, and could this be optimized for the users? And reanalysis.
David, it's Martin.
Yes, Martin.
I'm just looking at the time and we're halfway through the meeting. I wonder, are you almost finished? Otherwise, we're going to run out of time for the other speakers.
This is my last slide and I just finished, Martin.
Wow, good timing. Thank you.
So if you could click the red stop share button up on the top, David.
Done.
Great. And then let's see, who is next?
So while Jessica's sorting things out, we'll save questions until each of the three speakers has completed their presentations. So our next speaker is Rick Allard from the Naval Research Lab in Stennis, Mississippi. He's going to be talking about Navy modeling activities in support of YOPP. So Rick, if you're ready, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Can people see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we'll move past slide 1. My collaborators are Joe Metzger, who's in Oceanography Division, and Neil Barton, who's at NRL Monterey. So I'm on slide 2. So just a brief summary of our Global Ocean Forecast System 3.1. It's the HICOM model, which has a 7-kilometer resolution at mid-latitudes. It's the ocean model with 41 layers. It's coupled to SICE, which has a 3.5-kilometer resolution at the pole, and it's two-way coupled. It's forced with the Navy's atmospheric model called NavGem, and our data assimilation system is called ENCODA. So it runs daily at the Navy DSRC, which is a supercomputing site, has a 24-hour update cycle, and we produce 7-day forecasts. And it's presently undergoing operational testing. You're just looking at a couple of movies of ice thickness on the upper right and ice concentration on the lower right. So I'll move to the next slide. So we've been participating in what's called SubX, and that's a NOAA effort. And so we're using our system developed under ESPC, the Earth System Prediction Capability, and we call this system NESM. It's a Navy Earth System model. We also been using it as part of SIPN and now SIPN 2. So it's fully coupled atmosphere, ocean, ice. So as part of the SubX work, we produce 4 times a week a time-lagged ensemble out to 45 days. So in a given week, you'll have 4 ensemble members. And we've been using that to leverage some work with the National Ice Center. We've supported ICEX, which is essentially just ended the other day, and also Operation Deep Freeze out of McMurdo. What you're looking at on the bottom is just an example looking at the ice age errors. This is for the whole Arctic. These are for 4 ensemble members that were initialized in late January of this year, and it runs out to about mid-March. So the black line is the ensemble mean, and the red line shows you the actual observed errors with our GOFS 3.1. And so you can see for the first maybe 7 or 8 days, they're pretty similar, but you do see some divergence over time. I'll go to my next slide, slide 4, and this is just showing you what the ice age errors look like for these 4 ensemble members for the Bering, Chukchi, Beaufort Sea. And you can see they're pretty much locked in for the first, I don't know, maybe 4 days, and then you can see over time, especially, I won't call it a particular day, but you can see how the solutions start to vary. And of course, as far as the operational ESPC, we're looking at about 15 ensemble members. We're just trying to get the cores available when this system goes to IOC and FOC over the next several years. Okay, now I'm going to show you what we are planning on providing to YOPP. The data is tagged with the DOI to tag it with the Pangea website. So we have to go through the formal public release, which we should be getting any day. But this just shows you a list of the parameters. So ice thickness, concentration, snow depth, your ice drift, your surface temperature, your ice strength, air temperature, sea surface temperature, and then the surface ocean currents. And so for the GOFS 3.1, we'll be making this output available every 12 hours out to 7.5 days. And for our SubX 4-member ensembles, all 4 ensemble members will be made available out to 45 days. So essentially a snapshot on a daily basis. So our plans, so obviously we're making this data available. We do have a web page which should be accessible through YOPP, where you can download the graphics for the GOFS system, but the actual data should be available hopefully soon through this Pangea, if I'm saying that name correctly. I've talked about GOFS, SubX, and so our future plans, we plan on setting up a high resolution, approximately 1 kilometer SICE forecast system. We're still determining the region, but it most likely will include the Fram Strait. We'll be forcing that with a 3 to 5 kilometer coamps atmospheric model, and of course we'll be utilizing the YOPP observations, anything that's available through GTS that we understand the data format for. And my last slide, slide 7, you just saw this on the previous presentation by David, just showing you the 2 regions. We're focusing on the special observing period starting in 1 July, And so we're just going to we're taking a serious look at what we anticipate will be available, where we can get the biggest bang for our buck. And we plan on making all this data available to the YOPP community. And that's all I had. Thank you. Now I need to unshare the screen. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rick. That was a flying presentation there.
Okay,
and,
thanks. I didn't go too quick.
As long as everyone remembers their questions for later, we'll be fine.
Sure.
So our next speaker, our third speaker, is Jean Petrescu, National Weather Service, Alaska region, based in Anchorage. And Jean, when you're ready, you'll be talking about NOAA modeling activities in support of YOPP. So please go ahead.
My first slide. Yeah, hello?
I think you're on mute, Jean, but you're good to go now.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody see my first slide?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to be giving what I'm calling a sampling of NOAA YOPP modeling activities. So I'm fairly confident that there's probably other activities than what I'm going to talk about today, but these are the ones that I'm aware of and have talked with some of our collaborators regarding. So, and I think Janet may be on the line, so she may be able to answer any questions later on during the question answer period. But the first suite here is NOAA ESRL RASM YOPP modeling activities. And the first one on the list is Janet and her group did run the RASM model during the ISEX campaign to support the Navy over the past month and a half or so. What's unique about this is this was the first time they've run the RASM during this time of the year. Previously, it's been done during freeze-up. The ESRL group will also be providing ice drift information guidance from the RASM to the YOPP SIDFEX project. Also, they're also supporting the YOPP verification project, which was mentioned earlier. RASM guidance will also be provided this upcoming fall to support several activities, the ONR SOTA deployment, the various UAS activities to collect atmospheric and ocean ice information, and to help Alamo placement deployments with PML and Environment Canada. Also, in a couple of years, the expectation or hope is to expand the RASM to year-round forecasts during the Mosaic campaign. Next set is PML YOPP activities, and I did receive this from communicating with Jim Overland, and the plan is to do a project trying to predict fall ice development north of Alaska, and using ocean profiling floats to gather initial conditions, and an initial study looking at some high mid-latitude connections, initially starting with December 2017, which was a near record warm month in Alaska, and with a persistent ridge, and looking at the connection between ice-free waters north of Alaska with persistent upper-level ridging and subsequent downstream cold temperatures in mid-latitudes, especially along the East Coast there are around Christmas and New Year's. So specific NCEP YOPP modeling activities with the Weather Service, they'll also be providing ice drift guidance to the SIDFEX project, also providing GFS outputs to the YOPP data portal over the SOP high intensity regions. And as part of the YOPP verification program, the collection of RTOFs, global variables in support of that project. And looking at our testbed improvement ground activities, we don't specifically run any models, but we will be involved in evaluation of CIS guidance during specific YOPP intensive evaluation periods or observation periods. And what we're currently doing now, we actually hope to expand this, trying to include, currently this is being done within the Alaska Sea Ice Program. However, we'd like to potentially expand to the National Ice Center next year. So we're starting to have those conversations so that we can get more eyes on the guidance. And this is strictly operationally focused. So looking more at ice edge changes, land-fast ice characteristics in the guidance, if they have that capability, ice concentrations, especially leads, ice drift and pressure when available, and navigable channel widths near points of interest. So actually, I should say this is currently planned guidance and evaluation process. We have been and will continue to work with the Esrael group with the RASM model. We are currently bringing in the CMC CAPS modeling system REOPS. We hope to get the GOF version 3.1 data here when that becomes available and include that in our evaluation process. And at least here in the short term, we are looking at UK Met Office's guidance they're providing for the, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing this correctly at all, but the max size experiment. Although for our interests, since that's really fairly north of Alaska right now, we don't have any real operational shipping activity, but we're definitely taking a look at it and trying to see what we can glean from that. Also, potentially year two is following Environment Canada's lead is to try to stand up some virtual forecast desks, both ice/atmosphere, to try to take advantage of some of the additional observations available during that time frame. And lastly, and this was mentioned earlier, that we are providing forecast support, or can provide forecast support to research operations. We have provided, we did provide support to ISEX, and from especially an aviation standpoint, and we'll also providing some support to the again, not pronouncing correctly because I don't have it in front of me, but the max size ice or something similar project, or similarly named project. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gene. So let me thank all three speakers for their presentations and giving us different information about different aspects of YOPP from their particular agency or academic perspective, or in David's case, a high-level YOPP perspective. So if anybody has a question, please go ahead and please identify yourself and the particular speaker that you have the question for.
This is Wisław Maslowski. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Wisław.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify the last speaker presentation with regard to RASM. There is RASM Esrael version of a main RASM effort, and I'm concerned that it might be confusing that when the last presenter is referring to RASM as RASM instead of RASM Esrael, those are separate, parallel, complementary efforts.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Thanks, Wisław. I was wondering the same thing myself about, because I know you have RASM, and I was wondering about differences there. Thanks for the clarification. Another question?
This is Ola Person. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ola, go ahead, please.
I can make one clarification on Wisław's comment. The main difference between the RASM and the RASM Esrael models is the resolution of the atmospheric component. The atmospheric component is 10-kilometer resolution in the RASM Esrael. Well, I believe it's 50 kilometers, but I think you improved that now in the RASM model. Is that correct, Wisław?
That is correct, and there are other differences as well in treatment of sea ice and the ocean and land hydrology and the extent of the domain and many other differences.
Right. So I actually had a question here with regards to the GOFS model. that was a very nice and succinct presentation. In the output that you were going to provide from the GOFS model, either I missed it because it went by too quickly, or it wasn't there. Is there going to be any wind output? I know you have the ocean currents and you have the ice drift movements, but the wind component is an important one to really look at the relationships between those three things. And I didn't see that there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me talk with Joe Metzger. Essentially, we were looking at the data fields that were already being streamed, like to the NIC in support of ISACs, and I tried to find the least common denominator. But yeah, at the very least, I think surface winds or 10-meter winds, something along those lines would be quite helpful. So I'll see if we can add that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ola. Another question.
This is Tennille, and I saw that David had in his presentation, he's sort of mentioning, he has a specific slide on the output data sets that are going to be produced by ECMWF and ECCC. And I know, looking at the YOPP modeling plan, that there are lots of other models like RASM, RASM-Esrael, GOF, that also talk about being part of this experiment. And I guess my question is a really nuts and bolts one. Right now, as we're discussing formats for the observation verification files, we only have people from ECMWF and ECCC represented in terms of trying to get things to be sort of easily comparable. And I'm wondering if the community is thinking about how we're going to do something for comparison for variables to these other modeling efforts. Are they going to be just kind of doing things output in their native formats internally and externally, or are they interested in knowing about what kind of homogenized file formats we're coming up with the ISO sites and ECMWF and ECC?
Well, this is Rick. It would be good to know what those proposed formats are. It looks
Okay.
like, so if you can either shoot me an email. For us, certainly on the model output side, we use NetCDF, so that would be easiest on our end. It would all depend on what level of effort or additional level of effort would be required on us.
And also, I'm talking about, just because it's the land stations looking at the atmosphere, it's going to be just land variables in those files and some surface and subsurface stuff. So I think it's likely that the ocean variables might be just completely on a different pathway, and I'm wondering if we might want to try to make those a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, I'll engage Neil Barton because he's on the meteorology side of the house, and yeah, on the standard, whether it be NavGem or even COAMPS, yeah, they don't typically deal with NetCDF. It's either GRIB or hopefully anyway. I'll learn what their formats are and see if he can get in touch with you.
Okay, we're having pretty regular meetings working on this, and so maybe what I'll do is I'll try to get an ISO announcement posted to the IARPIC collaborations or something like that, or maybe it's distributed to this particular team.
Okay, well that sounds good.
Thanks,
Neil, this is David. I wondered, is there any effort to engage NCEP in this? Because I heard that maybe it's Jean's presentation. They're also intending to produce output at the sites.
I actually was about to type an email to Jean because I think he mentioned a name saying that somebody was in charge of creating the NCEP output, and I was going to ask him, who is that, Jean?
Yeah, I didn't mention a name. I think it's a plan, but I can follow up and find out if that plan is moving forward.
Okay, NOAA is going to have NOAA has, I believe April 5th, there's going to actually be a discussion about what NOAA is going to do with the NCEP output, among other things with NOAA YOPP outputs. But my understanding is NCEP has a problem right now. Jean might be able to elaborate on this, that they are about to, YOPP is happening where they're about to transition to a major change in their forecasting model, and it's very difficult for them to implement something like pulling out variables, especially when they're in this transition period. Is that correct, Jean?
They're changing the dynamic core out of the GFS through this year, and I think the actual change date is going to be in December. So therefore, I mean, the statistics are going to be potentially different in the first part of YOPP versus the second part of YOPP. And the second piece of it is just the resources are right now all being targeted toward this major change, and so that's what they need to determine is how feasible this will be. And maybe they'll only do it for part of YOPP. They'll only dump data out, and not for another part of YOPP.
Well, the special observing period, the winter one, is underway right now. So, Jean, do you expect they'll be able to do anything for this time period?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think what we'll be able to do, David, is I think here at PSD we store GFS output on 3 hourly intervals. So I think we'll be able to create something from that, and we'll be talking to NCEP about that.
Okay, we want them to be well represented, so that's great to hear.
David, this is Heist. Really quickly to add on that conversation, I think the concern is that because of the major changes that are occurring to the model, any archiving of current output would basically be spending resources to archive soon to be obsolete model parameters. And so I think there's a concern that it's not worth the effort at this point because of the upcoming change.
What I'm hoping, David, is that NOAA will be really well positioned with the NCEP stuff, maybe for possibly SOP2, but definitely for SOP3. And I'm very, very happy that to hear, and that was new news to me today, that there actually is a SOP3.
Yeah, and Tennille, that was a decision that came up just at this Iceland meeting this month. Just for everybody's information, there is some discussion with NCEP that they might be able to do some data denial experiments for the SOP that's in the Southern Hemisphere, which is mid-November to mid-February, 18-19. And of course, that would be a global model. There's no SOP in the Northern Hemisphere at that time. So I guess that means that NCEP, as far as the Arctic goes, and the super sites will be the SOP3, which will coincide with Mosaic. That's your understanding, Tennille?
My understanding is it's under discussion right now, and like I said, I think that our leadership just kind of suddenly caught wind of the fact that we're kind of missing the boat on YOPP right now. I think we're very well represented for the sea ice forecasting section, but I think for the weather forecasting section, there's going to be, like I said, there's going to be a discussion about that in the next week or two with a higher level management.
Okay, got it.
But I am agitating heavily for NCEP to be better represented.
Okay, that's the kind of discussion that we hope to see happen at these IOPIC collaboration team meetings by bringing people together and maybe sharing information that might take longer to share if we didn't have these regular IOPIC meetings.